All right, everybody. Well, we're going to get it rolling. So thank you for coming today. Let me get my camera following me. Welcome to those in person, as well as those here on Zoom. We're going to get going. Lead with listings. So my name is Alex Fenske. I'm an agent, and I'm the team leader for the Keller Williams Elite Market Center. So what I do primarily is I consult with our top agents to help them with their business goals, business plans, lead sources, hiring leverage, life balance, right? Investments, right? All sorts of fun stuff. And this is a really important topic. And I just feel like it's even more important now than ever. We're going to go through why. So we've got 90 minutes laid out. I promise to get you out of here on time. This is interactive, so there's going to be discussion, and there's also going to be a few exercises so that you can make some decisions and walk out with an action plan. Because while I'm sometimes mildly entertaining, I'm not entertaining enough for this to be valuable just as entertainment. So it's got to turn into action, right?
Alex, give yourself a little more credit.
Actually, mildly, I think that's fair, right? Yeah, I'll do my best to crack a few jokes. So one thing that, and I apologize, I didn't get this out in advance. One thing that will be helpful is if during, there's a point in the content fairly early on where I'm going to ask you to look at your list of recent closed transactions. Thank you. So if you have a way to access that, it will be helpful. All right. With that, the people who are in person should have a workbook, but for our digital attendees, don't feel left out. It's just the slides printed, so there's nothing, you're not missing anything. But I just wanted to give you something to write on. That is all for that. As far as housekeeping items go, before we get going, anyone have any pressing questions or what we're about to do that I didn't cover? Is that good go? All right, seeing none, let's get into it then. So today, what we're going to cover is how to work a PowerPoint. Yeah, sorry, I had to get my clicker going here. So today what we're going to cover is just a quick introduction on why this is becoming more important. And then we're going to go into three different elements of understanding and decisions that you'll make. So one is method, meaning where and to whom you are conducting your prospecting and marketing message, what you're saying in that, and then developing an action plan so that you actually have something to walk out of here and do instead of kind of getting stuck at that implementation spot. So we're going to be going through all of this. Anybody who's on Zoom, if you'll remain muted as you are, but please unmute to ask questions because I don't have my chat pulled up here and I probably won't see it if you just put a message in the chat. So if you're on Zoom, unmute to ask any questions. If you're in real life, also unmute to ask any questions. See, I told you mildly entertaining. It's not a stand-up act. So first off, why are we so focused on listings? I pulled this, by the way, the content that we're going through is assembled from various sources. For the most part, none of it's original. I'm pulling things from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book and research shift, the business planning clinic content, and a little bit of data from NAR. All right, so I didn't make any of this stuff up. This is probably a little bit hard to read, even for those who are in the room. So we'll just hit on these points. So what is it about sellers, about listings that we're always talking about and focusing on? Well, number one, it's marketing opportunities. So you get a sign in the yard. You may even do some additional marketing or advertising around it through other channels. And people are seeing your brand. Tell me, has this ever happened to somebody? You get like a call or a text or something from a friend or a past client, and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm in some weird random place and I just saw your sign. You're everywhere." Anyone ever gotten that call or text? And it's like like you took like one random listing in some strange place that you normally don't do business, but they happen to see it and they noticed it because they know your name. Does that happen with buyers?
Yeah.
Like
No.
nobody's ever like, oh, I saw your buyer sign in a yard somewhere. No. So if the game of real estate is dependent upon the number of people whose mind share you own, meaning when they think of real estate, they think of you, and that is this business. Signs and yards help with that, as well as all the other stuff you do around marketing it, right? You're going to post it to your Facebook page. You're going to, have whatever other advertising, open houses, whatever it may be. So the opportunity for marketing and mind share is there in a way that it is not with buyers. Number two, time. We've done a lot of research and data on time. Does anybody know? There's some pretty good numbers around how many hours it takes to service a buyer client to closing versus a seller client, and it's different. Can I say different? Prior to this craziness that's going on in the market, based on all the research that we had, what was that ratio? How many sellers could you close in the same amount of time it takes you to close a buyer?
Was it 8-to-1?
Shit, I take four sellers to one buyer.
Absolutely.
The research shows 3-to-1. And again, that's research that's been around since before this madness. So given how much more time it's taken to get a buyer to the closing table and how much less time it's taken to get a seller to the closing table, it probably is at least 4-to-1. And so, you can look at this and say, well, hey, if I close 20 deals and 19 of them are buy sides, I theoretically could have closed like 50 if half of them were listings or half or better were listings. That makes a pretty big difference in your life. And you either can work the same amount and make a buttload more money, or you can work less and make the same amount of money. So it's a pretty big deal. The other part of that is, what's the magic that happens when you get on a plane and go somewhere for a vacation?
Yeah.
And then all of your listings start going under contract, right? It's like Murphy's Law. Val, am I right? Like when you want your listings to go under contract, leave town. The cool thing is that can happen, but with your buyers, that's a little bit tougher thing to pull off, right? So Jeff Glover, who was at Jeff Glover's class that he did last? It was last like June. It was like the first thing we did in person in forever, right? Yeah. And the way that Jeff teaches it is he says that the listing agent in real estate is essentially the employer and the buyer agent is the employee. They're the ones that are out there pounding the pavement to sell the listing inventory, and the listing agent is doing whatever, right? So it's not just the number of hours. It's also the the who's out there doing that work versus who sort of did the work when you listed it, and then it's I'm not going to call it autopilot, but it's a lot different. Now, buyers are still half the business, and as you'll see in a little bit, a lot of where you get sellers is from former buyers. So we don't want you to ignore them. We don't want you to be based upon them solely, unless you're a buyer agent on a team, because that's a totally different ballgame. So you have that control of your time, and you don't have that urgency. Oh, who is so irritated when people are texting you at like 9:58 p.m. about here's these 14 houses that I found on Redfin, and 10 of them are under contract, and 3 of them don't meet your criteria, and it's insane. Nobody likes that, because then you feel like you're letting people down, and you feel like people need everything right now, and you don't have that with sellers, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is number 4 here is kind of like what we were just talking about, where you can carry 15 to 25 seller listings at any given time. You can't do that with buyers. I mean, anyone ever worked with 25 buyers at the same time? No, because you would not physically be alive anymore if you had tried that. You wouldn't be here to be having this conversation. It's just not possible. You do get some front-end pricing information. I mean, you can notice things happening in the market when you're on the listing side that you don't when you're on the buyer side, right? Because you're seeing, what the contract prices are, how many showings are happening. As a buyer agent, you don't have that information. And then lastly, additional research does show that the properly marketed seller listings bring you more business. And I don't mean just through referrals, because buyers can give you referrals just the same way that sellers can. But with those signs in the yards and the other advertising that you can do around it through lots of other channels, when you properly market a seller listing, it will bring you more business. It might bring you more buyers. It might also bring you more sellers, but it will bring you more business. Anyone here attest to that? When you have seller listings, you get phone calls, you get signed calls, you get internet leads, right? Did I leave anything off? Anything you guys like about seller listings that that I didn't talk about here?
Money.
Tell us about that without breaking
Yeah. You make more money.
that.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Exactly. Well, it's definitely more compensating for less time, and then it would be for a buyer, increasingly more.
With a buyer side commission, who decides the amount of the commission?
The listings agent.
With the listing side commission, who decides the amount of the commission?
I do.
You do.
And
Right.
so it's more, when you're doing your business plan, your income is a little bit more predictable based on how many listings you get. For
It's just flat out more.
Yes.
I mean, if you make a third
I
more,
thought you were telling us not to.
you can't talk about what percentages you're charging because we're in a room with brokers from
Right.
different companies.
Right.
But so we're not going to talk about the amount of the percent that you charge, but what we'll say is that it doesn't have to be
increasingly more.
equal,
Yeah,
right?
no.
Right? You know, nobody said that what you receive by
And I
the
think
listing
more
agent's
importantly,
determination.
You're saying that the listing agent actually controls
Yes.
that.
Yes.
So you
Yeah.
could charge, you know.
And there's a pretty common mark where the buyer side commissions, where the co-op commissions fall. On the list side, it's up to you.
Yeah.
And many, I'm going to say most top listing agents are able to command a higher price on the listing.
Yeah.
Because they can show their value, they have a track record, and you don't have that ability on the buyer side. So not only does it take you less time and you can do 3 or 4 of them at the same time as one buyer, but your commission amount per deal will actually be higher.
Right.
So you can make 12 times the amount of commission by focusing on sellers as opposed to only buyers.
Alex,
Yep.
Alex, I mean, just one other thing. I found that 75% of the buyer's agents do not keep in touch with that buyer that bought your listing.
Oh yeah.
And they become an orphan and they then become your client. So because buyers don't have the regimented, detailed script and everything that a seller's agent has. So they just go by the way and they're off running on their new buyer.
Yeah, Dave, you're 100% right. And orphan clients, I mean, that in and of itself is a lead generation method because a lot of agents won't stay in touch. And if you've been a part of that transaction, again, your sign was in that yard, they know your name. And if you're the one that continues contact after them, after a few years, they're going to think you sold them the house. For real. So yeah, it's a good point, Dave. All right. Anything that I missed here on the virtues of listings? They're just so good, aren't they? So if they're so good though, then why don't we just all have like a bazillion of them? Like, why are we even here having this conversation about finding more listings, right? I think there's 3 reasons that are pretty common or the most common reasons that somebody who desires to earn more listings, hadn't gotten there yet. I think one of them is you may not have been in business long enough for some of your past buyers to become sellers. I mean, if you are the agent that stayed in touch with them and they're not, and they're moving anywhere locally or even if they're just selling here, even if they are moving somewhere out of the area, more often than not, you're the call if you stayed in touch. Now, if you've only been in business for 3 years, 4 years, you might not have a whole lot of buyers that have owned the home for long enough to become sellers. Although at this present moment, that might actually not be true because the amount of pricing gains in the last 3 years has been absurd. So it's probably a shorter time span than in most cases. But that's a frequent reason. And so, but there's things you can do about that. Another one is that you're lead receiving versus lead generating, right? Who tends to be more vocal and active? People that are thinking of selling a home or people who are thinking of buying a home?
Buyers.
Even if they're doing both, what are they talking about? Buying. Yeah, because selling is just a thing they have to do in order to get to the home they want to buy. They're not selling because we're leaving this house and then we don't care where we go. No, they want something different. They're focused on what am I buying? And then we just have to sell this house. So So if what you're doing is lead receiving instead of purposely generating leads with intent, what you're going to come across more often than not is buyers. That also shows up in the language we use, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today. But this is another reason why many people end up buyer heavy and they didn't intend to. And the third is that the lead generation you do doesn't intentionally target sellers. You might be using very general sort of language, in which case it almost defaults to attracting buyers, or you may be using messaging that specifically attracts buyers and you wonder why you don't have more listings. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to address all of these items today. So what is the solution? Overall, it's to be purposeful about generating seller leads, because you're not going to luck into it. Like, you're not just going to luck into, having more than half of your closings be listings. That just generally doesn't happen that way. Do you disagree? You think you just get lucky and end up selling a boatload of listings?
No, I'm very intentional about.
Yeah, you are. So it takes work. You have to really actually commit yourself to it, but it's possible for anybody because listings are half the business.
And it
right?
plays into the one thing.
Mm-hmm. So why is this class called Lead with Listings? Well,
That's who's leading.
it's kind of a double entendre there because, we're talking about leading with them, but it's about the leads. Here's why. This is a startling number. This is the NAR profile of home buyers and sellers. They publish a report every year. It's like 130 pages. There's a lot of extremely good information in it. And anyone can download that if you log into the NAR website. I mean, it's got information about agents and how much money agents are making on average, what they're doing to market, commission objections, who brought up commission objections, where people bought homes, how they found them. I mean, there's a lot of good info in there. For the purpose of today, there's 2 slides I pulled out of there. This is the number of agents contacted before selecting one to assist with the sale of a home. One agent. It was 82% of people who only spoke with one agent before deciding to list their home. That number higher than you thought?
Yeah.
What's all this? Oh, I lost this to another agent. Listen, the data shows that's actually extremely uncommon. 82% of them talk to one agent.
Because they don't have the time to talk to a whole bunch of agents. They're busy.
Well, they are. This number is actually up by 5 percentage points.
Wow.
A lot of people think that with all the advances in technology and all these other options, that certain things are changing in a way that they're not. I mean, the other stat is the percent of sellers that use an agent. That's up. It's a record high. It's all the way up to 92%. People are like, oh, well, I could just list it with this or that. Self-service sort of companies or whatever. The percent of agents that use or sellers that use an agent is at a record high. And the percent of them that only speak with one agent is at a record high. So what does this tell you?
Stay in touch with you. Well,
Let's
first
play the
one,
market share out there.
for me,
He made it simple.
Yeah, go ahead.
For me last year, I think you're right when you say that's higher, that probably 90% of people only spoke to one. And last year I worked less and more listings, was the first year ever.
Yeah.
That I had more listings, and it was mainly from my sphere, not from lead generating. Not from.
Well, but there is lead generating to make sure that you get those
differently
opportunities.
than
Yes.
what I'm used to. I'm used to the, for sale by owners, the
Sure.
expires. Well, there hasn't been any.
I think it may be the next slide. We're gonna go into lead sources and where people found their agent. But yeah, I mean, just so that's not just half the battle, man. It's almost all of it.
I think of it this way, if you're the first agent and usually they go with you, it's something you did that they're gonna interview the second agent. Like, don't
Yeah, right?
mess it up.
Yeah, you
Because
probably
when you're
screwed up.
With one, you didn't go in prepared and you lost that.
Yeah.
That's how I think of it.
Yep. Yeah. When you really know that is when you do a pre-qualification. And who here does a pre-qualification before a listing appointment? It's really helpful. So when you ask them before the appointment, are you interviewing any other agents? They say no. You go to the appointment and then they say, well, we're meeting with another agent. Yeah, you screwed something up, right? But yeah, Julie, what you're saying is that basically in the vast majority of cases, once you get to the kitchen table, it's yours. It's yours to lose. Especially if they already told you they're not interviewing someone else. So the moral of the story is be first. Honest to God, if you did nothing else, I mean, you're going to have some idea of what to say at the listing appointment and pricing and all that. But what we're saying here is that's actually not the first thing to tackle. First thing to tackle is to just be first to the table. Also, point number 2 would be to be first. And the third point would be still to just be first.
Yeah.
So why are we talking about leads today? Because if you just generated more listing leads, you'd automatically get more listings. We can work on buttoning up the listing presentation later, but what's happening right now, did you lose 25 listings last year to other agents? No, you just didn't sit at those 25 tables is all.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is leads, because that's actually the place where you can get the most mileage for applying some extra effort. Fair? So how are we going to do that? How are we going to be first? I know this is probably too small for everybody to see here, but again, this is from the NAR profile. What this says is that the method used to find a real estate agent. So remember, they're going to go with the first person they talk to. How do they find that person? Well, 39% of them found that person because they were referred by a friend, neighbor, or relative. So Kim, you said, a lot of it was from my sphere. Well, that's actually the most common way that people find an agent, even above having used the agent previously. The most common way people find an agent is through being referred by a friend, neighbor, or relative. So there's a huge clue there. And how do we generate more listing leads? Well, you better have mind share in the minds of the friends, neighbors, and relatives, which is just the people in your database. That's your sphere, right? Because everyone in your sphere has their own network with a little bit of overlap, but a lot of people you've never met. Number 2, 29% of sellers found their agent because it was the agent they used previously, past clients. After that, it's basically noise. There's nothing else with more than 4%.
I didn't even notice it till you pointed out the percentage
Yeah.
after that.
Yeah, it's 39, 29, and then what were you talking about? There's really nothing else that constitutes a large amount of it. So it doesn't mean that nothing else works. It means that the first place to tackle is these 2 things, which is referrals and past clients. I'm sorry if you were coming here hoping for some groundbreaking information. I'm just trusting that when we sit here and show you that this is very, very real.
So basically it boils down to stay in contact with your database.
Well, and that's first, right? It's not the only thing, because for many of us, your sphere referrals and your past clients are the first place to start. But for many of us, that's not enough to hit our goals, right? Now, if it is, then congratulations, that's all you have to do. But if that's not enough in and of itself, when you look at the ratios of how many people are in the database and how many deals don't want to close, if it's not enough, then you need to grow the database by these other sources. But here's the lesson. Don't go chasing these other things until you're cranking at these. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying don't do them. Most people do need to do them. Just don't skip over these 2 gigantic pieces of the pie.
What's other?
I don't know. A bunch of random stuff that's
That falls somewhere in between, organic.
Yeah, people wrote on the survey, Abraham Lincoln. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like,
percent, so they just combine them all together.
right, exactly. Now, it is worth looking at the fact that first-time sellers, that number is actually significantly higher. So first-time sellers, even more than all sellers, 47% of the time found their agent that was because they were referred by a friend, neighbor, or relative. Now, wait, why isn't that used agent previously to buy home?
Because they're not staying in contact.
Nearly half of first-time sellers did not use the agent they used to buy the home. They got a referral from someone else. So this is why seller listings are available to begin with. I've often been puzzled by that, right? I'm like, why do I even have seller listings that weren't my buyers? Right? Because they should have been going with the agent that they bought the home for, unless they were retired or something, which is usually not the case. So 47% of first-time sellers are up for grabs. And you're going to get them primarily by referrals. What other thoughts do you have on this fun little slide here? Jamie, do you feel like I tricked you into coming into this class?
I was thinking about that. I was like, well, I mean,
No, we're gonna cover some things that I don't think, that I think are gonna be helpful for anybody who already has internalized this, except honestly, if I stood here and talked about a lot of other stuff, I'd be doing you a disservice, because the chances of you earning this business, I mean, what are these two numbers added up? 39 and 29, 68%. And there's nothing even close. There's nothing even close to being a double-digit number. So we're gonna work on that. Start with your past clients in your sphere, and then you should definitely have at least one other source that you become great at. Right? Now we're going to go into method. Method is your lead generation sources, or where or into whom you are marketing yourself. So this is from Shift, the book Shift. The concept of method and message is in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. This particular page is in Shift. And so right now is when, remember I told you that you should have access to your closed transactions. Right now is that time, because I'm gonna, next slide, we're gonna take a few minutes and have you guys do this, all right? This is what you do, is you take your list of your lead sources and the number of deals you closed from them. Now, usually the way you do it is you look at a list of your closed deal. If you don't have it already tracked, you look at a list of your closed deals and you just put a little letter next to it for which source it came from, right? And that's a pretty quick exercise. And then you tally it up and go, all right, how many did I get from each source? And then you take that list and prioritize it, meaning you reorder it so that the highest number of units is first, right? So, all right, here's all the tallies. And now I'm going, which one gave me the most closings? What was the second most, third most, so on and so forth. And then lastly, you're going to draw a line and say, you know what, this stuff I'm not even going to bother focusing on. It gave me a few things, but I'm really going to, because one person can't do 10 sources. Would you agree? Like if you're a solo agent, even if you're a small team, you're not going to have 10 sources. If you're a solo agent, you probably should have 3. And I'm willing to bet that the first 2 are sphere of influence and past clients, because that's just how it is. But do the exercise and we're going to get there, and you're going to say, all right, here's some stuff. By the way, there may be secret ones, like secret lead sources, and they're secret because they don't have any closings, but you spend time on them. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, both leads.
Well, it could be anything, like I remember one time I did this, and it was a year where I had, I never really prospected like expires and FSBOs. This was never my thing, right? But I actually committed quite a bit of time. I mean, I had the data, I had the 3-line dialer, I was hammering it for about 2 quarters. And I went at the end of the year and I was looking over everything, and I realized I had spent way more time calling expireds than I had FSBOs. And I actually had fewer closings on it. I'm like, I'm out. I mean, you don't have to drop it. If you really were sure that was going to be your thing, then that means you need to do it different, right? Something is not working and you need to change it. But in the meantime, if you have other sources that are working, just drop it. Focus on what works.
I think
Right.
too, and depending on the market, is whether or not expires are really gonna be the thing, because
I keep saying that word ain't expired. I closed 4 expires last year.
4, girl,
4.
4.
That's a lot. That was I listed out of
How much time did it take for you to prospect those?
15 minutes a day. But my ROI is low on that.
Okay.
So that's why I still stick, it is.
Well, typically in the marketplace, because of market pressures, when you have a lot of for sale by owners, you won't have as many expired listings.
Right.
When you have a lot of expired listings, you won't have as many for sale by owners. So those two tend to, play off of each other in that way. And you may choose to flex into and out of those. It's your call. But again, you want to measure, you want to sort of measure your return on time and on money. For me, I didn't spend a lot of money on expireds, but I spent a large amount of time. And I spent far less time on for sale by owners, and I have way more close. I have more than double the closings from that source.
Yeah.
They both paled in
And I'm
comparisons
not
here in
great
past
with
clients.
sub-offers. I do better with expired.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
when I was doing that, I mean, I was spending $300 a month on Vulcan.
Oh, no, I'm not spending that much.
And then there was, hours of phone calls.
Yeah.
I mean, and now you go on there, and you can have
There's
20
nothing.
areas and
Yeah.
there's 5 expires with
Yeah.
125 agents calling the same 5.
The reason there's a bunch of different lead sources, and they all work. All lead generation methods work. 100% of lead generation methods generate leads. They do, but they aren't the same for everybody. What works for you might not work for me, and vice versa. So right now, I want you to pull out your closed transactions.
Oh,
Alex,
Yes.
before you move on, quick question. The numbers in parentheses on that other chart,
Yeah,
what do they mean?
that it's just a sample. That was an example of somebody that, that was like the number of closings that they had from that source.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay,
So right now, pull out your list of closed transactions from the last, go at least 12 months. If you want to go 24, go 24. But tally up what sources they were from.
oh, we're really doing this?
Do it right now. Yeah. I'll give you a few minutes. Pull up your MLS.
Yeah,
If you don't have
I gotta get my phone.
you don't have any past clients yet, or you only had 3 of them, then just hang out for a minute.
Hey, Alex, this is for both list and buy side, right?
Yeah, I'd like you to do it for both, because one of the things that I find a lot is I'll be having a consultation with a high producing agent, and they'll tell me how they're stretched for time, and they're doing 20 something to 30 something units, and they're working 60 hours a week, and their profitability is low. They feel like they're not even making enough money, and when we go through it, they're doing almost all buyers, and there's big referral fees off all those buyers. They're paying 25, 30, 35% off the top of all of their business, and it's all buyers. So it takes them 3 times as much time as it was listings. And I'm like, listen, it's not just a time, like you're working harder than you need to because of that lead source. And that lead source, a common one is like Zillow, you're shelling out 4 figures a month. By my experience, $35 to $45 a lead for basically a quarter of a lead, because it got sold to 4 other agents or 3 other agents. And it's a high responsiveness game. So it runs your life, right? And you spend all your time trying to jump on the Zillow lead, and then go, and you're either paying 4 figures a month or you're paying large referral fees. You look up at the end of the day and wonder why it takes you so much time to run your business, and the money doesn't feel like it's there. So I want you to do all your units. I want you to do all your closed transactions. And then we're gonna look at, all right, well, how many came from listings, how many came from buyers, or how many were listings, how many were buyers. So
Can I just do my listings?
if you want, it's your business. Do your buyers later. What's important though, for sure, is that you at least, do the listings and know how many were listings and how many were buyers. Yeah. Stapler was getting a mind of its own, huh?
I think that's the bigger one that's used for the thicker stuff.
Oh,
Does the
okay.
Yeah, there's a few of them that look like something that they think
It's just a little design, that's all.
creative.
Whoever is done with that first, we'll start the conversation. I'd like to hear what you found. And then if you're still working on yours, just keep working on it until you're done. We won't move on until we're all tallied up.
You need to start a roll.
Scott, you got yours?
Yeah, my sphere is definitely my best rate of return.
So give us the units. How many closed units? How many from what source? How many were listings?
42 closed units, 22 were from Sphere, 7 were past clients, 12 were online advertisements, like a boom counter source like that. And then I just have one that wasn't from those sources.
Okay.
And then when I did listings, it was 19 listings, 11 of them were from the Sphere, 4 were past clients, and 4 were online leads.
So 15 were Sphere and past clients and 4 were online leads.
Yeah.
Okay.
And 79% were past clients or Sphere.
Yep. 80-20, huh?
Imagine that.
Weird. All right, good. Yeah, that's in line with what I typically hear. Those that are at a lower production level than that in terms of units, typically are even a higher percentage of their business is Sphere and past clients with few other lead sources.
Yeah, no other lead sources for listings.
Who else has gotten to the bottom of theirs?
So you can do both of them, right?
Yeah, listings first for sure, because you want to know. I mean, first of all, if you go to say, all right, let me look at my listings, and there's like not really any of them, okay, then the next portions of our show here are going to address that. But ultimately you want to know what your lead sources are bringing you. You know, if you have a source that's bogging you down with buyer leads, and you have another source that's actually bringing you listing leads, and we're going to go through a start, stop, continue exercise where you're going to sort of reallocate some of your efforts, that's going to give you the info you need. Until I was talking about like the Zillow thing, I mean, you may not have realized that certain online referral sources like your, Zillow and Redfin and all that stuff, they're going to bring you almost all buyer leads. A lot of people haven't just sat down and looked at that and realized that. You're like, okay, it's leads. Well, that's good. It's better than no leads. But if it's getting in the way of you building a better business, then it might be time to dial back or eliminate it, depending on what other sources you have. Julie.
Mine is, I have 12 from hobby, because I play roller derby. And that's
Okay.
where most of my leads come from.
Ah, all right.
So, but I noticed that in the last couple of years, not only did I sell to my teammates, but I'm getting a lot of referrals from them that are selling and now buying.
Yeah.
And those are multiplying like crazy.
Yeah.
So that's good. I have a lot from my Sphere, like 8 from my Sphere, but then I noticed that if I had a listing, I'd host an open house from that. And then I'd get people, but then I get referrals from the people I sold from the open house.
Yeah.
So it kind of all combines a little bit, I noticed. I don't know which way to place it though.
Okay, so yeah, I know what you're saying. So like if I got a lead from an open house and I helped that person and then they refer me someone, I didn't get that referral from an open house. I got that from a referral. I got that because I helped somebody, they were a past client, right? So that past client what their source was open house. But now this new one, the source that's past client referral.
I have a quick question too, Alex.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at like a referral from your Sphere, is it technically from the Sphere? I mean, it's a referral, but it's a referral from someone in your Sphere.
Yeah, I would. So I would call that an SOI referral. It depends on how granular you want to get because there's a few ways to slice this up. You can, when someone does business with you, that was sphere of influence. when someone you know refers you someone, that's sphere of influence referral. If it's someone who, if you get a referral from somebody who has closed a transaction with you, that person, you know, they may have started as your sphere, they're now also a past client.
Right.
You probably group all of those sources together in the way that you treat them, meaning, you know, the way that you market to them and what you invite them to, you likely treat them the same. So it may not be very instructive to break them down to like every little slice of how, you know, you might just say sphere influence.
They could all just be SOI.
Right. But there is something special about a past client. And it's, you know, it's shown on that second slide that we looked at, that second chart, because there's a whole other chunk of people that chose their agent because it was their former agent, it was their previous agent, right? And if you're not marketing to your past clients to keep top of mind with them, you're missing that. And that was the number 2 chunk. So number 1 is referrals, but number 2 is past client. So, and the thing about past clients is that, with some exceptions, you're the only agent that can claim that. Like, you're the only agent that, you know, is around today in their area that they have actually done business with. Sure, there's lots of other competitors out there, 1.5 million of them, record high number of real estate agents, right? Record high number of other options they could choose from. Redfin billboards all over the place. They got the Zillow app on their phone, but there's only one person around who they've actually done business with.
Well, I think people like to do business with people that they know and they feel like they can
trust.
Yeah. Unless they can't think of anybody, and then they click on the blue button and they, right?
I got it. I've done that.
Promise this is my last question. If you,
Go ahead.
so from a lender, well, let me ask you, I promise this is my last question, but regarding this, if it's a referral from a lender, then is it just a referral?
So sometimes we would, you know, we would call that an allied resource referral. So like allied resources is a category of people that we would say that that's like your other related service professionals, right? So lenders and inspectors and attorneys and things like that. We would call that an allied resource because they have overlap with your industry and they have the ability to send you referrals, even if they say they don't. I would probably call that allied resource referral.
Okay, thanks.
Nikki, what was your breakdown?
6 from past clients.
Now, are we doing listings or all units
Just
right now?
listings.
Listings, all right.
6 from past clients, 7 from sphere of influence and database, 1 internet referral, 3 expired. I listed 4 but sold 3. 1 from realtor.com, because I set up my profile so somebody found me. That was free. Then I have 5 past client sphere referrals and 2 FIFOs and 1 agent referral.
Okay. So you had, it sounds like it was about, 80-20 in terms of sphere of past client and referrals being the bulk, and then you had.
I'm very good.
Speak up a little bit so everyone hears.
So at my last company, they were kind of more of finding new leads, but my thing was always find new leads, but also focus on the people that I already was dealing with. Because before I realized that I sold houses before as a home seller, that I wanted people to stay. No one ever stayed in touch with me after I sold my house, so I bought a new house. And so even if you go on my Facebook, you'll see me saying, happy home anniversary to such and such, and we send them cards on their anniversary dates and things of that nature. So we have a system in place to make sure we're staying in touch with our past clients. I mean, we don't get them all. Some of them don't always use me, but I could say about at least 75 to 90% of them do call us back when it's time to sell or buy their next property.
Great. Anyone else done tallying up? Chantel.
So 17 transactions, 1 from postcard, so I guess that's marketing.
Okay. Yeah, you go direct mail or whatever. Yeah.
3 from SOI. And I always get that confused between SOI and database, but I just said people that's in my database that I know are members.
I'll get on my soapbox about database in a second.
Okay.
Go ahead.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 referrals, 3 past clients, 4 highlights.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, all right. So can you picture my soapbox? I'm getting onto it. If you already took business planning clinic with me, you already heard the lecture. I'm giving it again. Somebody taught us in real estate to refer to the people we know personally as our database, which is, we're doing ourselves a big disservice because literally everybody that you come across, whether you know them or not, they're an internet lead, to everybody, every single leading contact you get should go into your database. So database, I encourage everybody to not call a database a lead source, because literally every leading contact that you get should be in the database. What people often mean when they say database is they mean sphere of influence and past clients. And that's sphere of influence and past clients, but also your open house leads should be in your database, your internet leads should be in your database, your met you at a bar should be in a database. Like every leading contact should be in the database, such that every single piece of business you do came from your database.
So the SOI and past clients.
Yes. Well, a sphere of influence would be somebody you know that hasn't done business with you.
Like,
Right.
like people at church are counted as my sphere influence.
Sure.
I do at least 3 or 4 deals just with people at church
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah, you know them there, you know, but if, I mean, you may have, listen, your own direct family members, right? Brothers, sisters, mother, father, son, daughter, all that, they're all in your sphere of influence. If they haven't closed a deal with you, they're not a past client yet. Once they do, they're both. They're in your sphere of influence and they're also a past client. Yeah.
But if the SOI is people who I have not done this.
Yes. And then when you do, they also become a past client.
They're normally
Yeah.
in your sphere.
And then what about the referrals? That's just somebody from my SOI or past client gives this person to me to say, hey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Someone gave you a name that was not already in your database.
Okay.
Now I got a referral from them and I'm going to add them to my database. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Who I think someone else was ready. Matricia?
Someone else was gonna go before me.
Not quite ready. Kim?
How far do you want me to break it down, Alex?
Well,
Like, I'm just,
let's look at listings.
it's really a good exercise.
Inside of your listings, what were the sources?
So there was 35 total closed units, 19 lists, or 20 lists,
Okay.
15 buys. 16 came from my direct sphere,
Okay.
which is interesting.
That's
I
great.
knew, but 4 were my own deals, 7 past clients, and then I just combined the rest as internet sign leads.
Bunch of random stuff.
Just a bunch of random.
MISC.
If you would have asked me this 2 weeks ago, I would have said more came from my past
Yeah.
clients. So it was interesting. for me.
Yeah, and that's why we do it, because if you haven't done it recently, it might not be what you think. I mean, I mentioned the secret sources, right? Because I'll ask someone, if I ask what are your lead sources, they'll tell me what they spend time on. If we do this, though, the answers might be different. And they might go, holy crap, I thought one of my lead sources was open houses. And looking at this, I only closed 1 deal from open houses in the last 12 months. I did 30 open houses. What am I doing? Should probably stop that, right? Or do it fundamentally differently, right? So yeah, what people spend their time on, it's the 80-20 rule, right? There's a critical few activities that bring you the vast majority of your results. And until you study it, you may not be right in what you have in your mind. You may be off, and doing this might go, oh, wow, it did for me. Right? I told you with the expired and FSBO thing. I was like, wow, I didn't realize, how imbalanced that was. And then I could make a smart decision about it because I looked at the numbers.
Yeah, this was a good exercise.
Anyone else want to share, Matricia?
So, I'm glad I did the exercise. So we're about at total 41 transactions with referrals from the Indiana side as well. Let's talk about the listings. So I had one that came from a referral of a friend. So I'm gonna call it a sphere referral.
Yeah.
Okay. Past client, so 1, 2, let me see. So I had 2 that came from a sphere and referral, and then I had 1, 2, 3, 4 past clients, and then I had 2 that came from agents that referred. to
Agent
me.
referrals.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I like that you mentioned agent referrals too, because I'll get some agent referrals too, but I pretty much don't do anything to get them.
Mhm,
So
right.
when we do this exercise, like I'm not counting those as a part of my business plan, but some people, it is their business plan,
Yes.
right? I know agents that they get 80% of their business from agent referrals
Right.
because they have an agent database and they market to it and they're strategic about it, you know, but you might have accidental sources, the onesie twosie stuff where, you know, I don't really call expireds, but I call one because it was on my street and, you know, blah, 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 right? You might have, you're always going to have some random
Some
stuff
random
like that,
but
which is
not your
fine.
intentional business plan.
That's right.
Activities that
Yeah.
you do daily.
That's right. So,
Alex?
yes.
Just one thing, I was really surprised because when you said combine last year and the following year, I thought there was going to be a huge discrepancy. But this past year was 65% from past client, 25% from client referral, and 10% approximately from SOI. But it was only 2% difference for the combined. And yet my perception was way off on what I thought, anticipated these numbers to be, because I thought, man, I knew last year, this 2021, everybody's leaving California. So,
Yeah.
you know, that was my perception of it, but it was really the same numbers the previous year.
Yep. Yeah. You know, what's interesting about that is that where you got your business is primarily dependent on your actions. You know, if you do a lot of things that keep you in touch with your sphere or your past clients or whatever, whether there's more transactions happening or fewer, or there's more people buying versus selling or whatever, which actually can't be the case. There's always the same number of people buying and selling total. But what the slice of that you get is determined by what you do. Right. And so proportionally, it'll probably stay real consistent.
Right. And with such a lack of inventory out here on the West Coast, I was aware of this, and it made me completely change my marketing plan. And I'm on the phone a lot more than I've ever been.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad looking at this is helpful. This is not groundbreaking. What it took, though, is it took me locking you in a room or on a Zoom call and saying, we're going to allocate the next 15 minutes to you sitting here and doing it. This is not complicated, but you hadn't done it. Right. So I'm glad you've done it now. We're going to move on and keep making some decisions and figuring some things out with this. I think I have to re-click it here. What on earth? There we go. All right, so we're going to look at lead sources now, and then we're going to make some decisions. This is a list of lead sources. It's not every lead source on earth, but it's a lot of them. Now, the question that we want you to look at this list through the lens of which of these are seller focused, because certain methods are methods that target sellers more than others, and certain methods are exclusively buyers. For example, I think apartment complexes on here. Well, unless you're marketing to the owner of the apartment building, there's only one kind of business you're getting from that, and that's buyer.
Mm-hmm.
The expired listings are only sellers, although they might come with a buy if somebody is doing both, right? So as you look through this, here's what I'm encouraging you to do. If in your lead source breakdown, the only real source you had was Sphere past client referrals, if you didn't have another source that was pretty solidly represented beyond those, I want you to pick one more of these, because you need to have one outside of those two. And I'd like for you to pick one that targets sellers, maybe not only sellers, but something that is going to bring you seller business. You need something besides your Sphere past clients and referrals. So take a look through this. FSBOs and expireds are sellers for sure. Circle prospecting could be both. If you're just calling around to, especially if it's single family homes, the majority of single family homes are owner occupied. Some are rented, but the majority are owner occupied. Networking stuff like community outreach, you're going to get a cross section, right, of the population. That's not targeted per se, but it's something. Key relationships, it depends on who they are and what sort of business they do. Teaching and speaking opportunities. So, you know, there's the age-old buyer seminar, which obviously is for buyers. Anyone ever done a seller seminar? Yeah. So how about that? I mean, it doesn't have to just be for buyers. Farming, that's similar like circle prospecting. When you're saturating an area with a multi-channel marketing and prospecting approach. Again, depending on what if it's an area with a bunch of apartments, you're going to be getting a lot of buyers. If it's an area with, a lot of condos and townhomes, it's going to be a mix, because a lot of those people don't own those units. If it's single family homes, especially the higher you get in price point, they become more and more and more owner occupied. Events depends on what the events are. Networking depends on where you're networking, right? So a lot of these could very well be that for you. I just want you to choose one that you like. That's not just your sphere and past clients and referrals. Once you got your one, let me know so we can keep rolling. Well, and actually, I'll fast forward the next couple of points. What I'd like you to do is start, stop, continue. It's always a good exercise for a lot of different things. Which lead generation methods are you currently doing that you should stop because the return is not there on money or time? Write it down. Which should you start that you aren't doing yet at all? And if you've got a good blend, that might not be any. You might say, hey, we're good, right? And lastly, which are you doing that you really need to build upon and expand? You might have one where you're like, man, I've only gotten a couple agent referrals by accident, but I know a lot of agents in a lot of places, and I'm really gonna become purposeful about that one. I'm gonna expand upon that. Again, don't feel forced to answer all three of those. You might not have a source that you're going to stop. You may be like, I'm only doing sphere and past clients, so I'm not going to stop anything. Okay, fine. I'm not going to fight you on that. I remember a team meeting that we had, my sales team, probably 2015 or 16. And I was very frustrated with what I saw as the low return we were getting from our database, because I'm like, I know we're probably missing out on a lot of opportunities there. And I made a bad decision, which was I said, you know what, forget other lead sources. Like, there's so many people in our database. If we just work that, we'll hit our numbers. Wasn't a good idea, because that can take time. And ultimately, not all of it's within your control, but I mean, it's a buildup, right? Building that mind share. So what happened that year is that the other stuff that we'd been sort of dabbling in pulled back, but the number we got from our sphere and past clients went up just a little. So we closed fewer transactions because of that. Whoops. Then another, I think it was when we were evaluating that, and I was looking at this going, well, that was clearly a bad decision. Nobody told me to do that, by the way. That was my idea. So good job. Then we said, all right, we looked at lead sources, and there really isn't anything aside from sphere and past client referrals like that. That's basically all we got. And then some onesie twosie other stuff that we didn't intentionally do anything to get. So we said, well, then let's find number three. What's it going to be? And we came up with three options. There were 3 or 4 of us on the team at the time. And so every option, somebody has to own that and like really push for that and, build it and get everyone to do what they need to do for it. And then, we each took one, and one of them pulled ahead of the others and, became our number 3. So that's what I'm encouraging you to do is, like, if you only have those couple sources and you want to close more business, don't rely only on that. You do need number 3. And that's not my recommendation. That's Gary Keller's recommendation, is that for a solo agent, you should have 3 primary lead sources: sphere of influence, past clients, and 1 more. By the way, we did close more deals after we found a 3rd actual lead source. Weird. Who could have guessed that? All right, raise your hand if you've filled out your start, stop, or your stop, start, and continue.
I didn't fill mine out, but I know in my head.
Share with us, Jamie.
Which method should you stop?
Yes.
I don't have any methods, if I'm totally transparent right now, so
Sure.
there's nothing to stop there.
Okay.
Start is the same thing that I've been telling myself I'm going to start, which I've actually been implementing in the
Okay.
database.
All right.
And then I'm gonna continue that, but I am gonna add in the volunteer charity work.
Nice.
That will be my.
Yep.
It'll be my 2nd. I don't know what a 3rd would be at this point.
Well, generally, when Gary says 3, it's sphere of influence, past clients, and a 3rd. So
I guess like I lump my past
Yeah.
clients into my database.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
most of us do, for the purposes of what marketing plan we apply.
Yeah.
Though there could be certain things where you might say, hey, we're going to have an event, and this is for people that have done business with us this year, right? That might be one way that you treat a past client different from someone who hasn't done business with you. But they're overall, it's mostly the same. But if you consider those 2, you just need 1 more. Yeah. I do, go ahead, question?
I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when they say on their investors, what are they, key relationships, like building it with somebody that you know who is investor?
Yeah, somebody that's buying and selling a lot of property, for sure.
Or no other investors. I got an investor for 1.2 million in sales last year,
Right.
and I never closed anything with him.
Oh, nice.
So
That is nice.
Yeah.
I call him probably every other month.
Right,
Just-
right.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, how you doing?
Well, and some people work predominantly with investors, and they don't do a lot of retail business, but to each his own, right? I gotta move on. I will tell you, I've misjudged the timing of the course. So how about that for an admission of guilt?
Right on, Alan.
If you haven't finished the stop, start, continue, dog ear that, come back to it for sure. We're gonna go into message now. All right, so it's not just who you're marketing to and where, it's what you're saying. And this is something that we too often do not think about. For certain things, people that are doing a lot of heavy cold calling are typically using scripts that they've used. But what about like when you're just talking to people? Are you thinking about what you're saying? Because it does make a difference. Man, there's that line we all got taught. Who do you know who's thinking of buying, selling a home, or investing in real estate that I can call today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's general, that's generic. And what's the first words out of your mouth? Who do you know who's going to buy? And now my brain's on buy, right? And buyers are already more vocal. So, we do ourselves a disservice in a seller's market by asking that question in that way. What I would suggest you do is you say, who do you know that is thinking about selling property? Are you thinking about selling any real estate? Now, if they think, and then you go into the categories, right? From church or work or the neighborhood or maybe a group you belong to, it's thinking of selling a home. If they're out, they got nothing, and now you want to ask about buyers and investors, go ahead. But if you get them on the buyer thing, they'll never think of a seller.
We also asked them if they know anyone looking to start a career in real estate too.
That's also a good little add.
Okay.
So from Shift, they talk about make an offer for immediate response. I don't know why they wanted to make that into like a cutesy acronym, but they did. But when in your messaging, you have to be making offers. Like people don't call you on a generic flyer that's like, call me for real estate needs. They don't call. That's so generic, it doesn't speak to anybody. It may be a little bit of mind share if you're hitting somebody a lot of times with that. Then you're at least getting the consistency of mind share, but that is not an effective call to action. That's not an offer. You have to have an offer. And an offer is something that they want. So we're going to go through a big list of examples of those. You need an offer and a call to action. A call to action is what you want them to do. Call here, click this, scan this QR code. That's the action you want them to take. But the offer is the thing that they want, that you're going to use to draw them in. And in all of this, specific messaging is far, far, far more effective than generic messaging. And that's going to be represented in the things that we go over. Call me for real estate needs just doesn't work for anything except mindshare. And if you send a postcard to 1,000 people that don't know you and it says that, you're gonna get 0 calls.
Yeah.
You send that to 200 people once a week for the next 3 months, and you'll get calls just because people will not be able to ignore you. Like, you're going to be everywhere, right? You will actually have mind share more than any other agent at the end of that. But as far as effective messaging, it's just not there. So what do we mean by effective messaging? And by the way, we're talking right now about seller-specific offers. Here's some that you would use in conversations, prospecting. Are you thinking of selling real estate that you own? And it's not just your home, right? Any real estate you own. Maybe they got a condo in California and my referral fee is bigger than my average commission check here. Great. Send it to Dave, right? Inventory is low. Who do you know that wants or needs to sell property? We need listings. There's so many buyers looking and there's not enough homes available. I have a buyer looking in your area. Do you know of anyone who might be thinking of selling?
I like that one.
Do you own any investment properties?
If you don't, you should.
Well, if they do, maybe they don't want to,
Right.
right? A lot of people that own investment property don't want to own it anymore.
I don't know, Alex, that one, it's hard to get evictions right.
Right? Here's a good one, and this one people have used, like with door knocking. You go around with the offer that you made where your buyer lost out. I think I stole this from Jeff Glover. I told you this wasn't original content. Hey, my buyer just lost a bidding war on a house in the neighborhood and is willing to pay top dollar in this neighborhood. Have you considered moving? I got an offer right here.
Yeah, like take your shit and get out.
Right. If you were ever to move, where would you go? This you can ask when you're talking to anybody. When you're in real estate, this is not a weird question. You know, when they're talking to you about real estate, you go, yeah, tell me about the neighborhood you live in. Have you thought about moving? Where would you go? Where's your dream location? When would you move there? Well, it won't be for a long time. Well, like when? Oh man, I mean, our kid doesn't graduate from high school for another 1.5 years. Like, that's not a long time. You're going in the pipeline right now. Right? So that's a good one for any kind of conversation. Another one that you can say to strangers, door knocking, circle prospecting. Hey, if someone offered you above market value for your home, would you consider moving?
Yes.
All of these questions attract sellers, right? And they're all specific. Now, these are all conversational ones. Now, you can come up with some more, right? I just wanted to prime the pump a little bit, right? And say, but think like this. Think about asking specific questions that would uncover whether somebody has property and whether they might want to sell it. In my brain, we were gonna do some brainstorming around that, but we gotta move on. Here's some other seller-specific messaging that you might use in print. These are questions and statements that are more geared towards print marketing. Tired of paying Illinois property taxes? Oh my God, we sent out a property tax email to everyone in our database because I noticed that as we were taking listings, a lot of the Cook County listings, people's exemptions had fallen off and they weren't supposed to have. They were supposed to auto renew this year and they didn't. And I'm like, holy crap, I bet we got a lot of clients that aren't selling and a lot of Sphere that aren't selling who doesn't realize that their property taxes are missing exemptions that they really deserve. So we sent an email out that said that, hey, we're noticing when we're listing people's homes, by the way, it's like a humble brag, right? As we're listing all these homes, we're noticing a lot, specifically with Cook County, we're noticing a lot of erroneous missing exemptions. Reply now if you want us to take a look at your property tax bill. I have never gotten anywhere near that many replies on an email. We were buried. And we tried to add it up. It was like 50 grand in missing exemptions that we ended up helping people just take. Here's where you get the forms, do it yourself, you know. But that's a good contact point. It did bring up people that are like, yeah, you know, and by the way, we're probably going to be selling this one next year, right? We're tired of these property taxes. But I mean, is someone going to say no to that? Everybody's tired of paying property taxes. An age-old classic, free market report on your home, right? Click here, scan this, whatever, for a free market report. See how much equity is in your home. That's a little different twist on the same thing, right? It's just different wording. Empty nester, time to downsize. Let's address this as specific messaging. Sometimes we go, well, that doesn't apply to like that many people. It's only a small segment of the population. So aren't I missing out on everybody else? What if they're not that, but they want to sell? They're not going to respond to that. That's true, but the generic thing of, you know, thinking of selling is not going to hit home. When you say something so specific to their life, and they felt like your little postcard was written for them, is when they're going to pick up the phone, or they're going to scan the thing, or they're going to go to your website. So you have to use the specific messaging. Out of space, that's the opposite, right? Not are you downsizing? Hey, are you out of space? Go send that out to a bunch of starter homes, right? Because you know there's a bunch of people in there that are out of space, and that messaging is going to resound with them. This was a big one, right? This past couple of years, do you need a home office? Hey, is your family piled on top of each other and at each other's throats during e-learning? Would you like more space? Right? Can't stand Chicago winters? Send that one out this week. Send it out right now, because they're going to sell in March. Man, want this to be your last winter in Chicago?
Yeah.
If they've been talking about it already, right? They're gonna respond to that. Wondering if now is the time to sell. Because some people were just having a conversation last weekend with family about, we're not sure if now is the time to sell, right? Help, these buyers need a home in your area. 2022 Home Sellers Guide. The only people that are going to request that are people that own homes that are thinking of selling. FYI. 5 things not to do when selling, right? That's going to get a little fear approach in there. Don't screw this up. Thinking of selling this spring? A bunch of people are. Putting a timeline on it. There's plenty more. There's plenty more. So you can come up with ones that suit your market, suit your area. Again, I just want to prime the pump, and I want you thinking this way, so that when you're sending out a bunch of stuff and you're talking to people, you're saying things in voice and in print that are attracting sellers. So now you have some revised lead sources based on what's bringing you sellers. And now you have some tweaks to what you're putting on your marketing and what you're saying in your prospecting as you go and speak with them.
This, Alex.
Right?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
See, if I didn't come for anything else, I can do this.
And I actually, when I told you that earlier, when I saw your face sink after the slide where it was just like sphere and past clients, Jamie Douglas was like, you jerk, you brought me into this class to tell me the same thing. But no, this is good, because when you're talking to your sphere and past clients, if you say this stuff, you're going to get a better response than if you say, who do you know is looking to buy real estate? Okay.
I hate saying that anyway. It sounds
Yeah.
so cold, and it sounds so salesman-y, and it's just.
You have to start it off right. So I was like, hey, Happy New Year. What are your plans for the year? Like, no. Oh, great. Do you know anyone looking to buy a home, sell a house? Because you got to start it off right. Then it won't feel so pitchy. And they still say, thank you for calling. It was nice talking to you. And I'm like, I don't even know what you said, but yeah.
I think you meant to say you listen with care. All right, we just kind of did that exercise, so we're not going to allocate more time for that. We got some good stuff that we still have to hit. Action plan. So number 1, you've selected your methods. We did that exercise, and you've got some good information on selecting your messages. Now we got to get an action plan. It should include 2 things. Before we leave the room here, I want you to have some kind of a plan in place that's going to help you maximize what you get from your sphere and past clients, because we just saw how critically important that is to capture that first. And number 2, a plan to implement or improve at least a third. Now, if you have a team and you're already doing 3, you want to add a 4th, and you have the people to drive it, cool. But if you're a solo agent, don't be talking about 5 lead sources, because you can't do them all. But those two things are what you should have in place, and we're going to walk through that now. I'm going to quickly hit the 4 laws of a database. Again, this is from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Number 1, build it. Get all of your leads and contacts into one spot. You can't do the other parts of this until they're all in one place. So I got all these people on my MLS contacts. I got my phone. I got my this list and that list and my Excel sheet of that. And then I got my actual CRM that I use. You got to get them all to one spot. That's number 1, build it. 2, feed it every day. That means you take all the bar napkins and you get the leads into the database. Otherwise, they'll never hear from you again. And we know that about 90% of business comes from follow-up, not the initial conversation. You're probably not going to list the house at the bar, but maybe after you talk to that person a few more times later, right? So that's why, because if it stays on the bar napkin and the floor of your car, you won't ever talk to them again and somebody else will get the listing. So all leads go into it, no matter what sources they come from. They all need to get into your database.
Absolutely.
Number 3, market to it systematically. We call that a 36 touch. We're going to go like a bare bones version of it here in a second so that you can at least get something going. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. So something's better than nothing. We're going to go through an easy sort of maybe shortcut-ish way to do it. And number 4, service all leads that come from it. That means you have to do that thing where you call people back and stuff. Even if it's business that you're not going to service directly. Hey, I'm looking for a home to rent for $800 a month. Somebody probably wants to give that a shot. If it's not you, refer it. But don't leave dead ends that come from your database, because how many more referrals do you think they're going to send you if you didn't call the one that they sent you? I can answer that for you. 0. All right, that's the 4 laws of a database. I want to focus a little bit for a second on number 1, because honest to God, that's where most of us get stuck first. This is real wordy. I just grabbed this from like a thing where we're working with a VA to kind of figure out what people needed. Here's 3 different phases of building your database that you might be in. And I'm going to hit these so you don't have to try to read it all. Number 1, you might be in the stage where what you need to do is a contact roundup, meaning your contacts are everywhere and you need to go and find them and get them and put them all into one spot, right? That's the contact roundup. So if that's where you're at with it right now and you've got a bunch of different lists and databases, put a star by that one, because that's going to be on your action plan. That's where you need to start with the contact roundup. I personally recommend just like clearing your calendar for a day, shutting everything off and just doing it all at once. Just get them all into one spot. And or, VAs and stuff can be really cheap and easy ways to do a bunch of data entry work after you assemble people.
Or Fiverr.
Yes. Stage 2 would be the contact sort or organize. This is where you're like, cool, I've got 2,000 names, but a bunch of them are random internet leads and a bunch of them are actually really close relationships. And I'm not going to treat all those the same. So I need to organize them. Normally, like with most CRMs, you would do this with tagging, right? So you would apply tags, SOI, past client, internet, right? So going through and tagging. This one, again, in my experience, the best way to do it, turn off all your stuff, print out the list on paper, lock yourself in a room, and just write the name of the tag or a letter for the tag next to each one. S for SOI, P for past client, R for random, whatever, right? Whatever you choose them to be. But that's the thing that nobody can help you with, because that information probably only lives in your head. So that you have to do that. And you're like an animal that can't sit still and do it. And I know that because you're a human being, and that's a tedious task. And if you're a real estate agent, you're even more likely to be like a freaking out animal to sit there. So you got to computer off, phone off. I'm locked and I am just going to write a letter next to this. You can actually knock it out pretty fast. And then go have somebody else go and apply the tags, right? Go pay somebody on the internet $5 an hour to apply the tags. But it's got to get out of your head first. So if that's the stage you're in, if pretty much all your contacts are in one spot, but it's just a random assortment of people and you can't work with it, then you're in stage 2 of that, the contacts sort and organize. Stage 3 is contact completion. I've got all the names. I actually have them categorized and stuff, but I'm just missing a ton of contact info. And at that stage, you need somebody to probably come in and help you. Like, for example, I recommend using the biweekly neighborhood nurture smart plan. And if you're using command, and in order to do that, you need an email address and they need to have a neighborhood applied. So, that can be tedious work if you're missing a lot of that. You can get some of it one by one, but that's a project that's going to take you a long time. So you have somebody go and look a bunch of stuff up, or, you know, like go find this, go use Forewarn, you know, because Forewarn is for checking to make sure someone's not going to stab you in an open house, but it's also for making sure that the people in your database aren't going to stab you around the listing appointment. So you can use it to find their addresses quickly if you want. Yes.
So I did that step last year.
Yeah.
After talking with you, Alex, honestly, and when you told me to do that, I was like, yeah, there's no chance I'm gonna do that. So then what I ended up doing, just being honest, so what I ended up doing to get it done is it took me the entire quarter, but I did it with the same letters of the alphabet as when you're doing your contact.
Yeah.
So if you're, I don't care if you follow A, B, C, B next week, or if you do your A and W, whatever you're gonna do.
Yeah.
But that's how I did it, and I got it done. So yes, it took me longer than if you want to hire somebody, but if you're like, I'm not going to hire anybody, at least do it. Just do it at the same time you're doing the connection.
Yes, there's more than one way to do things for sure. And I remember you doing that and working through it. You know, God bless you, because that wouldn't have worked for me. It worked for you.
Alex?
Yes.
Alex, excuse me, quick. What was the system that you referred to that was available to KW agents?
Command?
Right, but I mean, within that, I thought.
Oh, the smart plan?
Yeah.
Okay, so inside of smart plans, those are all the pre-built and customizable action plans. The biweekly neighborhood nurture is the one that I recommend, because as the slide we're about to look at shows, one of the critical components of a 36 touch is 26 biweekly real estate related market related reports. And the biweekly neighborhood nurture is that, and it's content you don't have to invent every time. You set it and it runs, and that's done. Go ahead.
It wasn't a system that can collect information for us. It's
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's once you have that in place, it takes you a matter of minutes to apply those plans to you get thousands of contacts, but you have to have the email and the neighborhood applied first. Yeah. Now, if you use a different CRM, whatever, fine. You know, then there's other stuff you can do, but put a note by which those stages you're at, because that's going to go on your action plan. Within the 36 touch, this is a good example of what a 36 touch is. And again, this is just a marketing, it's a multi-channel marketing plan that's designed and is proven to build mind share, such that in general, people hear from you often enough. And when someone thinks about real estate or mentions real estate, they think of you. This will get it done. It's 4 quarterly phone calls and 26 biweekly market real estate related reports, not recipes, real estate related reports. In addition to that, a couple of other maybe client events or promotional stuff, your calendar magnets and your recipes and whatever, fine. But these two are the most important. So it's just, and they're actually the most leverageable and automatable. So we're going to start there. The events and the promos and all that, it's good stuff to do, but not if you're skipping the first 2. Okay, those are the first 2 because they're the first 2. You love the simplicity, right, Scott?
Love it.
So here's the couple of first steps is number 1, adopt one system for making the calls. Because remember, first the calls and the market reports, just get those done. 2 things you can do. You can use the quarterly call smart plan if you use Command. You can apply it and stagger them out so that every day Command will tell you, call these people. Here's your list. So you can do it that way. You can do the database too, which is where you look at, there's 26 letters in the alphabet. There's 13 weeks in a quarter. So if you arrange the letters, and we have the pairings so that you don't end up with big lists and short lists and stuff. We have those pairings, but you can call 2 letters of the alphabet each week. You can do it that way, sort of manually, right? Or you can just call down it alphabetically, where you just take the number of contacts. I'd say divided by 12, because it gives you an extra week to play with. There's some times where you guys don't work, right? Just saying, there should be. Divided by 12 weeks, then divide that by 5 days, and you have a number of calls to make per day. And you just pull up your entire database list in alphabetical order, and just every day you make a note of what was the last one you called, and the next day you pick up where you left off. And if my number is 19, I call 19 a day, and all right, tomorrow I'm starting with the next name. You can do it that way too. But pick one way that allows you to methodically call everybody each quarter. That actually is the most important part of the 36 touch plan. It's the most important. It's the most important because the least people do it. That's why it's the most important, because the other people aren't doing it. So when you do it, you stand out and you get the business. Number 2, Get your 26 biweekly market reports going. Again, if you use command, the biweekly neighborhood nurture does it for you. You never have to write an email. You never have to generate content. It's done. If you use another system, if it has something like that, do that, but get that in place on everybody. Those two things, if you just, that's not a 36 touch, that's a 30 touch, all right? If you at least get those two going, you're 80% of the way there.
When you set them up in the command on the quarterly call
Yeah.
on the smart plan, does it go off of the tag that you have on there?
Depends on who you apply it to. You can say, or you can sort the list or filter
Well,
and
we
then
just
go.
applied it
this
to
list.
everybody. Let's just say
Okay.
you applied it to everybody.
And then what you would do is you would say, all right, stagger the, so roll the plan out. Don't start it on all of them today. You know, roll it out over the next however many days. And then it would apply the plan, you know, to these people this day, these people the next day, these people the day after that. And then it would come up on like a rolling basis. We'll help you with that outside of class, all right?
Wait, tell it, say it out loud.
Come see me on the 27th.
Yeah, that's right. Scott's running the Command Masters Task Force, so.
Oh,
Yep.
27?
Yep, there you go. So decisions, where are you at on the database building, right? Are you at Roundup? Are you at Organize? Are you at filling in missing stuff? And then which approach are you going to use for making the phone calls? Make that decision right now. You don't need any more information. Just make the decision right now and make that a part of your plan. In terms of any lead sources that you were going to start or improve upon, the stuff you're not already doing outside of your sphere and past clients, there's two ways you can write an action plan. You can write a sequential action plan. I got to do this, then this, then this, then that. Or the more thorough, intense ways to write what we call a GPS. You're not going to do that right now. You don't have time. But what I will encourage you to do is choose right now a way that you're going to write an action plan. If you do it this way, decide when you're going to revisit this. Don't just leave it open because you'll forget, it'll fizzle out. But the one thing that I for sure want you to do is I want you to at least write down one step that you will do in the next 24 hours relating to everything that you've just made some decisions. Doesn't that feel nice? You're like, I decided stuff and I have, right? I have clarity now on what I'm going to do. Right? You got to do something within 24 hours. There's a lot of research that says if you don't, you're probably never going to do anything. So write down right now what you'll do in the next 24 hours. There's one final step. Tell somebody who will hold you accountable what you just said you were going to do. Okay, well, identify what you are going to do.
You know, so funny when we activated the smart plan, how the people opt out. Because Blake's like, yeah, so many people. I said, why are you excited about that? She said,
Right?
it's working. I'm like, girl, please.
That's right. So the reason I want you to tell somebody what you're doing is because individuals with accountability around their goals are nearly 80% more likely to achieve them than those that don't. So if you have identified actions you're going to take, and you all should have by now, text somebody, email somebody right now before you get up from your chair. Tell them what you're going to do.
What about the smart stuff you said?
That's a part of your decision making.
That's what I'm saying. Is that what we're saying?
Whatever your action items are.
That's what I'm saying. That's right.
Yeah, that's your action plan for your new and improved lead source. If it's a start or continue, right? And a stop, that's a decision in and of itself. So that's it. The last slide is just questions and ahas. Thanks for rolling with me a couple minutes over. Questions and ahas. Did I leave anything out that you were hoping to get out of this, or what did you learn?
I think the only thing, not that, and I know there's not any real like, but so I get it, like with the listings and your database here and then adding some in there. You know, I don't know what everybody else is seeing, but I know even when people are speaking about selling, right? If they're having these conversations, I'm sure we've all been up against this where they're like, okay, well, where the hell am I gonna go? Because there's no inventory for me to go to, and I don't have to sell, but I'd like to sell if I want that home office or that bigger yard. Yes, I tend to work and navigate around that, but some I'm like just not cracking that because they're so set on, I'm gonna be homeless.
Ultimately, all that means is that that's just not your seller for right now. They might be a seller for later, or they might not have enough motivation to sell right now, right? Because if it's not convenient, I'm not going to do it. Other people right now, though, are selling. There's more transactions happening now than like ever. So if those people are held back, cool, keep them in the pipeline. Go find the ones that are selling now because there's more than ever.
Yeah.
I think a little bit more seller education at that point is usually what it is. You know, if you explain to them, they may have to spend a few more dollars to get something, but the money is super cheap right now. Talk about.
That's not the concern that I'm getting though. The concern is like, I only want this area and there ain't shit out there.
That's just not a motivated seller.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Because someone on their street is going to sell their house.
Fair enough.
And they either have another plan, or they're willing to stay somewhere temporarily, or they're moving somewhere out of state or whatever. Find the next one.
Fair enough, because I mean, I have gotten through over that
Yeah.
hump on people that were actually motivated.
You might be able to, it might be an objection that you might be able to handle it, or it might just be a condition and they're just not motivated enough, and you just go find them. There's 25% more sales closing right now than there was at this time 2 years ago. So, I mean, there's more people who are actually selling than ever. So that's not for right now. Pipeline it. If you can't handle the objection, move on, go find another one. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other quick ahas before we wrap?
Thank you.
Did you get something actionable out of it today? I want you to be able to like go and like do something with us.
I think one of my biggest ahas was that percentage of only talking to one agent.
82%.
I mean, I knew it was high, I just didn't think it was that high. So that was definitely an aha for me.
This, I'm losing listings at the closing table, at the table, kitchen table thing is largely a myth. I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't have time today, but let's go back over the last year and add up all the times you lost a listing where you went on an appointment and you lost the listing. The number's not as big as the number of listings you didn't end up at the table for. That's what the problem is. So.
I know one, but it was over Zoom because of
Yeah. Okay, well, one, all right, cool. That's not where we are gonna apply pressure, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna apply pressure on the listing lead opportunities, so. All right, anything else? Anything from our TV audience out there? Yeah, it's my studio audience and my TV audience. No? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. If you have other questions or you struggle or stub your toe on the implementation, reach out to somebody, me or a peer accountability partner or something. Don't get stuck on this. Do your 24-hour action item, text your accountability plan to somebody, and let someone else make sure that you do that and don't squirrel away. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Love to see you soon.
Thanks, y'all.
I forgot.
Wow.